If you're South Asian and you're thinking about intermittent fasting, this is the ultimate video on how you can decide whether it's right for you or you need to ditch it in the bin. I've got 3 potential strategies that you could use to use intermittent fasting to shed that belly fat. The most important question to ask is, why do you want to do intermittent fasting? Now, we know within the South Asian community there is a heavy reliance on large portions, and that fits in well where you are restricting your time of eating. So most people opt for intermittent fasting because they think they can have the same portions that they've having before. All they need to do is skip a few meals. The second one is they think about autophagy, which is a cellular repair. Autophagy, I can't even spell it. But did you know that autophagy also happens in any diet that's in a calorie deficit? So the repairing of cells happens naturally in any diet. So that it's not particular to intermittent fasting. And most people use intermittent fasting because of the cognitive benefits of not thinking about food. So within the South Asian community, food noise and thinking about food is a large part. But a nice little rule set of saying I can't eat here and I can eat here is an easy way to shut off that part of that brain. So cognitive relax allows during intermittent fasting. Now, what's the difference between the 12-hour window, a 6-hour window, and just eating bog standard breakfast, lunch, dinner, and a snack? It's going to be on 2 things: preference and your ability to tolerate hunger, and maybe a third one, which is discipline when you get hungry around your numbers. Now, intermittent fasting still matters. Calories, regardless of intermittent fasting, equal king. So regardless if you do a 12, you do a 6, or you do a normal eating window, if you want to drop fat, you're going to need to honor being in a calorie deficit regardless of the way. What tends to happen is when people do a 6-hour window, this means there's a large time without food, reducing calories. And sometimes, not all the time, in that 6 hours, you cannot eat all of those calories required for the day, which helps you drop body fat. Now, the problem is the longer you do this, the worse your habits are, the more you can overconsume in those 6 hours. Let's say, for example, if you're so accustomed to having large portions in the evening and you're having second servings, you're having 3 or 4 roti, you're having big dinners with lots of rice and lots of chicken, and you're having your protein, but you're not navigating the right portion sizes, the right amount of calories for your day, you won't make any progress. But you'll be putting a lot of suffering in by removing food for the rest of the day. Now, the second part is hunger. Now, between these windows of a normal eating window, you might not even get hungry because you've got a full meal for breakfast, and then you have a gap of maybe 2 to 3 hours, then you have another meal, and then you have another gap of 3 to 4 hours. Now, providing you eat high volume food sources and you eat high protein and you're eating the right meals and not in a significant large deficit, you will be able to withstand until that next meal. So you'll be able to tick this one off, wait to the next one, wait to the next one, wait to the next one, and then you have completed your day's worth of dieting. Which means hunger does not build up dramatically when you're eating these meals often, and then they build up hunger, and before you know it, they're kind of doing an intermittent fast, but then they overconsume because they're trying to eat back lunch and dinner, and they're hungry, and they're not disciplined, and they have extra snacks, and it becomes a massive problem. And so with the 12-hour window and the 6-hour window, these instances of appetite regulation or increase in appetite actually also increase too, because you're going longer without food. If you combine this with some level of activity and higher levels of calorie burning, you will find during these hours of like maybe the 6 and the 24, you will find bursts across the time that hunger will be rather unbearable. And because hunger is cyclical, in a physical sense, every 60 to 90 minutes, your body goes through waves of hunger and then comes back down again and then back down again. But the problem is mentally, you've withstood that using discipline, willpower, motivation, just getting on with work, being super busy. But then at the end, when it's time to open the floodgates and you're then opening your 6-hour window, if you haven't got a structured meals plan, if you don't know what exactly you're eating during this window, you will eat more calories than what is needed. And therefore your intermittent fast will be for nothing. And you don't want that. The big thing you have to ask yourself with the strategies that you want to put in place is, am I willing to change? So some people, some stubborn people, do not want to change their position, their habits, their structures, despite being overweight. That's just being pessimistically stubborn. So if you don't want to get rid of those large servings of food, if you don't want to get rid of those, I get to eat what I want in the evening type of mindset, which probably got you to 200 plus pounds or 180 pounds with belly fat, you will more than likely gravitate, probably logically first from a cognitive perspective, autophagy perspective, and you're like, oh, it's great for my mindset. But realistically, inside, you're doing everything you can to absolve yourself from changing the hard thing, which is when you get to the end of that day, you're not having large meals, you're having normal meals for a normal human that is normally trying to get in shape, that is normal, with normal BMI, that is normal levels of body fat, not the 200-pound plus person that you were trying to be before. And over time, what will happen is looking at sustainability. So yes, you could do a 12-hour fast and you could have, 1, 2, 3 meals in here, for example, or a 6-hour fast, and you could do 2 meals, and that could be like, 800 calories each, for example. That's 1,600 calories. That'd be a decent amount for a female. That's like 70 kilos, or a guy that's 70 kilos. Or you could do something like 600, 600, which would be 6 or 18, which would be 1,800. That'd be great for most guys, anywhere between 80 and 100 kilos. And you could do that nicely. But you have to ask yourself, will I do this in 10 years? If you plan in the future to go back to a normal eating window where you have breakfast, lunch, dinner, and maybe a snack, you should probably learn to do this now, instead of practicing something that doesn't have any carryover. You do a 6-hour eating window and you teach yourself that you can have 2 large meals instead of 4 equally spaced meals of the same amount of calories, which means you get accustomed to that type of feeling and that type of portion size. You get used to that mental clarity of having that 2 meals in that space. So then when you leave this and you jump ship over here, what tends to happen is that you get disappointed. You don't have the structure, you don't have the preparation, you don't have the time management, you don't know how to fit these foods in, you don't know what to eat, and then you end up gaining your weight back because you haven't practiced it in the future. But there is one time that I would definitely recommend using intermittent fasting, and that is for females that are smaller in nature. If you ever wanted to kind of look at an easy way to reduce calories, and I wouldn't call it intermittent fasting, I would just say delay your meals. So let's say, for example, you're a female and you're 60 kilos and your calorie consumption needs to be 1,200 or below. That 1,200 needs to be spread out across the hours that you're awake. And if you're awake between 7 and 9 or 7 and 11, it would be unwise for you to use your calories in the morning because you have a long way to go for the day ahead. So what I do with some of my females who are more, I guess, staying up till 11 or staying up till 10, they've got a couple of hours of Netflix with the family, chilling out in the evenings. We save the food until then. So what you do is you don't eat for as long as you can. So you go first, for example, first meal, so you don't eat, and then at 11 a.m. you have a meal. And then you have your second, and then your third, and maybe your fourth over that time period. So you're kind of doing a strategy here, but your breakfast is now at 11 as opposed to 7. And yes, during that time period, you can use things like coffee, water, Diet Cokes. You're going to be busier in the mornings than you are in the evenings, so your productivity will then take away from being distractible. And therefore, when you have that 11, the gap between these meals are very small, very similar to how a normal strategy would be. And therefore, your hunger between these become less also. So the lower calories that you have, the more you want to utilize a delayed start of eating rather than intermittent fasting, because you don't want to do this forever. You do it when your calories are low enough to then get the results that you want to get. And then when you're maintaining your reverse dieting, you're going into a building phase, you will not need to have lower calories to be able to continue. Dieting is for diets. Dieting is for fat loss. When you're maintaining reverse dieting or building muscle, you will have more calories to play with and you will not need to use this strategy. Notice I use the word strategy, not diet. It's a diet strategy, not a diet in general, because the strategy is utilized in certain circumstances. If you prefer to never change your habits, use intermittent fasting. If you are using 1,200 calories or below, use the intermittent fasting delayed breakfast option. If you are a normal person trying to make long-term habitual change and you don't see yourself doing intermittent fasting in the future, don't do it now. What's the point? You're not going to get any more benefit. There's no extra fat loss from doing intermittent fasting than there is from doing a normal diet. Not only that, what are your family doing? Because you and your family are intertwined by blood, but you're also intertwined by routine and strategy and categorization of your kitchen dynamics. So why don't you do what the family does? If the family are not significantly obese, of course. So if your family are on the verge of healthy eating and they're structured, and that's what they follow, why don't you follow the same thing too? Because it makes the kitchen dynamic easier, it makes the washing up easier, it makes everyone's life easier because there's less of a routine. You're not thinking, oh, I have to eat now versus the kids have to eat. You eat all at the same time and you sort that out very, very easily. Kitchen dynamics creates consistency, period. If you're the one controlling the kitchen, you control the outcome. If you're not controlling the kitchen, you're just going to do what everyone else does, and therefore that's okay, providing you can make some tweaks and adjustments to the food that is coming onto your plate. But if intermittent fasting doesn't help cellular repair compared to normal dieting, if you don't want to change your habits, maybe intermittent fasting is for you. Now, if you like the idea of cognitive relax and you're not thinking about food all of the time, there are multiple options that you can utilize that don't involve just intermittent fasting. Have you ever thought about not giving yourself a choice of what to eat? Because non-negotiability reduces food noise down significantly. So what that means is that if you have a meal plan for the day ahead and you don't negotiate with it and you're not thinking about what I should eat for breakfast, what I should eat for lunch, and tracking my calories and seeing what I've got numbers left and adding this in and taking this out, you won't have any problem with food noise or cognitive issues. Therefore, why don't you just do normal people things and prep your meals and plan your day accordingly? Now, if you're an entrepreneur and you definitely feel the benefits from doing it, just do the delayed start. I used to do it a long time ago where I would delay the breakfast. So my entrepreneurship happens between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. So anything between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. is where you could get that benefit from just coffee, just water, and getting into work. That's totally fine. But if it's an extended period of a day where you're just trying to get the most out of your cognitive, I just don't see the real big benefit for most people, considering that when they do open their mouth, when they do open the floodgates, they cannot control that. It's only good if you can control the floodgates when you open, as well as how long you can go without it. And I'll tell you a story. I did intermittent fasting. I'm telling you from personal experience is I remember doing 24 hours fast first of all, and then I did a 6-hour eating window. So I did this one. Now what I made the mistake of is I went all day without food. So I was going down here, I was thinking about food, I was going through that motion of like, oh no, everything's fine, I got some cognitive benefits, boom, 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 boom. But around about here, I start thinking, oh, what should I be eating in this time period? And got some food ready for this window here. The problem is that once I opened the floodgates and when I had this food, I then overconsumed because of the excitement, but also the inconsequential thought process that I wouldn't be able to control myself as much as I'd done. I've got a history of like kind of emotional eating, a history of binge eating, a history of dieting and yo-yo dieting. So I'm very similar to most people that are going to be watching this video, where they've really struggled to control their mouth at some point in their life. So giving yourself a position where it makes it inconsequentially harder to keep your mouth closed and not eat as much food as you should do, I don't think it's beneficial for most people who don't have high levels of discipline and willpower. And you've got these people that will do any type of diet because they have discipline and willpower and they have control over their own mouth and their own mind. Most people watching this video, like myself, don't have that, otherwise you wouldn't be searching for shit like this on YouTube, right? So like, you don't have it. So don't make it worse for something you don't have yet. So that's intermittent fasting. In my opinion, delay your breakfast if you're on lower calories or you want some cognitive function, and then eat normal servings of food. Realistically, this system here will much easier allow you to stick to your calories, which then equates to king, it equates to results, and it equates to consistency, sustainability. So let's do that instead. If you like this video, let me know. Watch the extra video, some really cool, interesting tips on this as well.